It's a very good question. In fact, one of our dignitaries already mentioned that we are at roughly, let's say, about $60 billion industry, 30 billion exports and 30 billion within the country, pharmacy for the world, etc., etc. But innovation will play an extremely important role for pharma industry to up the game in the value chain. Because if we start continuing to manufacture the same backward engineered products, it will not help anybody. And the product might be the same, and packaging in turn can play an extremely important role for innovation. I'll give you a very simple example. In the Western world, there is something called as compounding centers where, let's say, oncology drugs are compounded, and compounding centers are pretty expensive. Just to give you an example, I mean, I'll go back, maybe I'll take another 30 seconds to explain the value chain. While we might make $30 billion, we sell, let's say, atorvastatin, a bottle of pills for, let's say, $1. The person who's actually wearing the white coat and dispensing that bottle gets $6 for actually dispensing that bottle. Yeah, the manufacturer is getting $1, the person is getting $6 to dispense. So that's the kind of value addition which is there. So why am I actually getting to that example is because in compounding centers, compounding is very expensive, more expensive than $6. So what we have done in Sun Pharma, we have a product of 505B2, which actually does pre-compounded material in pre-filled bags. Yeah. And this is a very, it's only a packaging innovation you might think, but in the regulated markets for these kinds of things, it requires a lot of work and help. And, people like Silicon can play extremely, can play a very important role. And I heard him say that, in some of the packagings, nitrosamines actually been controlled. Fantastic stuff. Other opportunity which I see for the industry to grow, where I can actually talk about packaging innovation playing a very important role, maybe Mr. Dayanand Reddy can also play his own part of role, is that a lot of you would have heard of this drug, the wonder drug called Wegovy and Ozempic. I don't know how many of you have not heard, but if you have not heard, you should go and talk to your children and the next generation, they would know of that, yeah? So these are all injectables, and in pharmaceutical, in injectables especially, the cost of packaging is more than the cost of raw materials. Okay? Packaging plays an extremely important role. In drugs like, pre-filled syringes and pens and these things, the cost of packaging can be actually 3, 4, 5 times of the drug itself. And this is a very, nascent stage at this point in time. The drug has not been launched. But we are going to be reliant upon most of the packaging being imported. If we can actually develop a supply chain of developing these packaging components within the country, it will be of great help, not just for the industry, but also for the end consumer, because the pricing can then be made so much more easily affordable and available for such an expensive drug. So these are two very simple examples where packaging plays an extremely important role to be able to make it even more affordable for the Western world and also for us. These are two simple examples I can think of.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think the complexity of packaging and the integral part which packaging plays in pharma industry is not lost on anybody. Particularly, I think when you deal with active stuff, right? Yeah. That's even more challenging. Where you have temperature control, you have packaging, and a very important point which you raise is sometimes the product itself is hardly anything versus the packaging and the entire logistics around it takes like the life of it.
Absolutely. In fact, I have another example which I am reminded of, that, oral liquids used to be all in glass bottles, and then they moved into plastic bottles. Dettol Antiseptic Liquid, the previous company which I used to work for, was in glass bottles, and it's a story for some other day. I actually played a very key role in terms of converting that into plastic bottles, because, a lot of consumers would complain that, my 500 ml bottle breaks down, it creates more nuisance, and so on and so forth. So we worked very hard. The commercial people wanted a fully transparent bottle, PET bottle would not work, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of innovation which goes into drugs, storage, manufacturing, because, it's as you rightly said, there's a lot of active interaction which can happen. Yeah. One area where I think I'll leave a thought, for the people is, we haven't still seen injection vials getting converted into plastics. And I am not a hardcore pharma guy. I actually worked for 25 years in consumer industry, moved into pharma. But I can tell you, I can bet bet on it that, in 10 years from now, you will see a lot of vials which will come in plastics. Yeah, because a lot of people think that glass is the holy cow, but it's not, honestly speaking. Yeah, thank you so much.